All right, guys. Thanks so much for coming out. This is the Music of Mother panel. My name's Cap. I'm the host of the Nerdy Show Network, and I also write for the music and film website Consequence of Sound. I love music. I love everything about music, but I do not play music. I don't know how to play music. It's a little too mathy for me. But I have with me some amazing people who do play music, and I'm really excited to talk to them about the music of the Mother series, their influences, how it's affected them, the whole shebang, because the Mother series easily has one of the greatest collections of sounds ever produced on a cartridge. Yeah. So let's have everybody go down the line from me and introduce themselves, who you are, what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, I guess I'm right next to you, so I guess hi, I'm Lauren. I go by Lauren the Flute online because I play flute. It's a really clever name. I'm not actually a flute. I am, last I checked, a human being. I also sing. So I lead a video game cover band called The Returners. We've played PAXs and various other things, and then I have a solo YouTube channel which has some Mother music on it, which is kind of how I got involved in this whole scene, and it's changed my life.
Hi, I'm Jamie Kerrigan. I'm a musician under the name Clover in Sea Life, formerly Space Boyfriend. I also have music out as Catan on Starman.net, some old mouth sounds that I made. And I'm also currently the composer for Omori, the Omocat video game.
Hi, my name's Alex. I play saxophone with the Super Soul Bros, and I'll be here all weekend playing sets for you guys each night after the convention closes down.
I'm Brian Chu. I play guitar in Super Soul Bros. And actually, both me and Alex do a lot of the arrangements for our rendition of Earthbound tunes and the Mother series, which you guys will be hearing a lot of this weekend.
Yeah. So the scores for Mother, the first two games, Mother 1 and Mother 2, that was done by the team of Kiichi Suzuki and Hirokazu Hip Tanaka, and then their work was followed up in Mother 3 by Shogo Sakai. All of them really talented musicians with some great influences. As you can tell by the music of the series, it's all over the place. These people, they love music. They love music so much, and they pushed the carts to their limits of what they could do. I believe the first samples used on Super Nintendo cart, and certainly the heaviest sampling to ever happen on Super Nintendo cart. Just remixing, composing, doing it all, so it's no wonder that their music has been so influential to so many people. I'm curious what you guys' first experiences were, like noticing the music of Earthbound.
Weirdly enough for me, it was like the first weird connection I had with it was when you enter a cave, and like in every cave track, there's that like high pitched like woo, woo thing in the background, and like there were like birds that made similar sounds in my neighborhood, and like no one ever addressed them. I never knew what those birds were, and I still don't to this day. And Earthbound just fed into the mystery.
Okay. I was actually going to mention something similar, that those noises that are present in a lot of the ambient tracks. My first impression is that it reminded me a lot of the Bebop app for iPhone, where you just touch the screen and it goes and I thought that was really cool. I like how the music fits the style of the game. I mean, obviously everyone's familiar with the game and the characters. The NPCs are very quirky. They say weird things that people in the real world might not say, but it fits the whole Earthbound aesthetic very well. And the music to me is similar. It's quirky. It's got, from a musical standpoint, some things that, I don't know, you kind of have to be a musician to get. Like, they're kind of just funny little jokes in the chords and stuff, and how sometimes they resolve things in ways that don't make sense. It's very, and I think even if you're not a musician, you feel the effects of that, but maybe to a lesser extent.
I actually actually entered the Mother scene through the music. I didn't play it when I was a kid. I got fooled by the This Game Stinks ad and did not give it a fair try because I don't usually like comedy. But one of my friends in college burned me the 1987 vocal arrangement album with Catherine Warwick and all of the rest of them. And that was a really rough time in my life. And so I listened to 8 Melodies and Pollyanna for like literally 6 to 8 hours at a time in a row. And that kind of helped me get through. And so then several years later, like two and a half years ago or something like that, so my friends are having a hard time. I was like, I'm going to record Pollyanna for them, even though I don't even really know Earthbound. And like the Earthbound fandom found me on YouTube, and like people say that people on YouTube are mean. That has not been my experience. And I think a large part of that is because of the Earthbound community. Like I was like, I haven't even really played this game, and they were like, we love you anyway. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to find the game that's inspired these people, and like it has been amazing. But it's all because mostly Pollyanna, that one song. I think people really try really hard to be cynical and to be edgy and to be complicated, and it's this song that has probably the cheesiest lyrics in the world, and I love them to death. And so something that doesn't mind celebrating joy and friendship and love and that sort of thing. And I think that the fact that that was so strongly a part of the music, so strongly a part of the community, that even like as an outsider I got pulled in by it, I really think speaks highly both to the composition and the fans.
That's true, and that record, man, that's so crazy. You know, Michael Nyman, fantastic film composer. He did the score to the piano and a lot of other brilliant works. He produced that record.
Really?
Some of the tracks on that record. It's so crazy. Like, how did that even happen? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I only recently learned that.
I had no idea.
Yeah, man. Check him out if you're into that kind of thing. So, Lauren, you've played Earthbound. You played Mother 3. Have you played Earthbound Beginnings?
Not yet.
Okay, because I know that's easy, it's the most challenging one, but it's also where your career with Earthbound music started, so I want to double check.
I've gotten really conflicting opinions on whether I should try it or not. People say there's an easier hack of it, and I might try that.
That's worthwhile. I mean, it is belligerently hard, so
It's worth it.
Is it?
it is a rewarding experience, but you have to kind of be into it, like into that kind of the experience of grinding and the rewards of grinding.
A lot of old RPG you have to forgive.
Yeah.
I played through Phantasy Star 1 on the Sega Master System.
You're
Does that train you?
So, you mentioned the 8 Melodies, and that theme has become so prevalent in the game world in general. People have latched onto it not just because of Earthbound, but because of its presence in Smash Brothers. And in Japan, it's an even bigger thing. It's such a simple melody. Kids play it on recorders at school. And they sing it at baseball games, just the tune of it, because they're all about like songs at baseball games over there. That's like there's a whole subcategory of sporting activity. And it's kind of fascinating where that came from, because this was a request to be Toei. He wanted to be something that was like very simple and beautiful that you could play with a single finger on a keyboard. And I did a panel last year about pop culture and Earthbound, a panel that I'm not presenting this year, but I hope to be turning into an article, so keep an eye out for that. And in it, I discovered the parallels between the development of Mother, the first Mother, and the late 70s horror film House. And in that, there's a reoccurring theme that is one finger simple. It's also called a singular American word, which was very uncommon at the time, and has poltergeist lamps that attack you and a piano that is mysterious and plays by itself. So there's a lot of parallels there. And it's interesting that the 8 Melodies probably came in part from something that abstract and kind of counterpoint to the nature of the 8 Melodies and Mother itself. And it's also something that Toei wanted to replicate with Mother 3. When he was talking to Shogo Sakai, he asked that the love theme for Mother 3 replicate that because he saw how it had gained popularity in elementary schools, and he wanted people to be able to connect with something like that again. And I don't know if it actually worked. I have no idea.
An interesting factoid about the love theme that I just learned, I think yesterday, is that originally that song wasn't in the game until like late. I think they came up with it during when they were planning for the final boss. Originally the theme was just going to be like a slower, sadder version of like the Fourth Army theme, but eventually they decided to throw in the emotional punches.
Jeez, I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
That's actually something that I'd read, and I thought that was really just interesting from like a thematic perspective in the game itself, because it seems it's almost impossible for me to imagine Mother 3 without the love theme, because it represents the good and it needs to counterbalance the pork army theme. And so trying to think of our heroes and our family and all of those good scenes connected to the pork army in some way is just impossible to imagine. It's been so worked into the game, and I think that really says something for how careful they were to make the music emotionally fit the game.
Now Silveros, you, Alex and Brian, you guys actively work, as you mentioned, in dissecting the music and reassembling it. Can you describe that process and what you kind of learned about the music in doing that?
Sure. Well, for this, actually for our last camp Fangamer, I played Earthbound for the first time, and me and Brian arranged a huge chunk of the music from the game, pretty much every major tune. And then for this camp Fangamer, I beat Mother 3, and we did a bunch of music, or Mother 3 for the first time about a week ago, and did a bunch of music for it that I found the most interesting when I was playing the game. So kind of the process for that is I picked the songs that, first of all, I think, well, will this work for our band? Our band has keyboard, bass, guitar, drums, and trumpet, sax, trombone. So I've got to think, how do I make this work for us? Because some things, like for example, in Mother 3, if anyone's familiar with the tune that plays when you name your characters, that's one where I wanted to do it, but I couldn't really think of a way to make it really applicable to us in an exciting way. It's such a short melody. There's a lot of melodies in Mother 3 that are really short, and they don't go on very long, so it's kind of hard to extend them, but there were things that were perfect for us, like a lot of the DCMC stuff. Tonight we'll be playing some tunes from Mother 3, like the Sunshine Forest. And where I start with that is, after selecting something that fits our group well, I think, and make it work, I transcribe it. So what I do is I listen to all the parts, and then I write them down. I usually start with the bass line, and then I do the melody, and then I fill in everything else. And I get the form of the tune, and I make a simple lead sheet just with the bare bone essentials. And then I start thinking, okay, who can take what part? Who do I give? What part do I give to what people in the band? And then when that's all said and done, I figure out the chords behind it. And I think Brian and our keyboard player Robbie they actually have a better ear for that kind of thing than I do, because they play chordal instruments. My process for that is very, music theory, like call it just textbook. I start from the bass and use that as my, I'm working off of that, and then I look at all the other notes in the bar, and I try to deduce what the chord is based off that. I don't have quite the ear where I can hear something and be like, oh, that's this chord, just based off the sound. I have to.
Well, I think we all
work hard on that.
We all kind of have to do that kind of thing. The real cool thing about the soundtrack to Earthbound especially, is that it's very Orin-centric. Like there's, and even Mother 3 stuff. But it features pretty much our instrumentation, which is like trombone, trumpet, and sax. And Earthbound, what I really liked about Earthbound is that it really featured trombone a lot, especially on a lot of melodies, and little goofy, weird melodies, just to just to give an air of awkwardness or something like that, or just like silliness. I think there's a lot of symbolism within kind of the instruments that they chose to play a certain melody versus, not playing a certain stuff. But yeah, pretty much what Alex said about the process of making our charts is pretty much what I do. Sometimes you can find the MIDI files of some of the tracks online, and that actually makes it easier to arrange, because when you open the MIDI in like Finale or Sibelius, which are music notation. So it's music notation software. It'll just open up the track with like all of the music, and then we just have to kind of arrange it in other ways. And sometimes we get to be a little bit creative and add little references to music that maybe we grew up with, or that are almost kind of unrelated to the game, but kind of sound like it.
Yeah.
So we kind of like to hide our little inside music jokes in there too.
I've heard you guys do it, and it's really great and charming, and very much in the vein of Earthbound when you do it. What are some of your favorite instances where you managed to stick in something else?
Being friends is pretty funny.
Oh yeah. So Being Friends is from Mother One, and I did an arrangement of it, the Smash Bros version that plays when you play on it, and I took the middle section, which goes into the 8 melodies thing, and then I put it over the chords for the canon in D, and then I did so it does that melody. Then I put it into a horn chorale, and in that horn chorale, the guitar comes in with the 8 melodies over that.
That's perfectly.
It fits perfectly. In fact, after doing that, I think Robbie did a wedding where they asked him to play 8 melodies while they walked down the aisle, and because it sounds so similar. So yeah, that's another tune we'll be playing tonight. If anyone wants to hear how that kind of worked out.
That's great. Now, Lauren, you also directly interpret the music of Mother, and you do it for flute. What's that process like?
God, I wish I could talk my band into playing Earthbound music, but we haven't gotten there yet. We will eventually. Problem is that like one of our friends who's obsessed with Earthbound also plays bass, and he's like, I'm gonna come take your bassist space because it's a very good soundtrack if you're a bassist. I also do a lot of starting with MIDIs if possible. It saves a lot of time. I use MuseScore because it's free and I'm cheap. But actually, one of the biggest challenges is I usually just take like a literal interpretation of what's written in the game, and then Pollyanna is my favorite song. And when I played through Mother 3, the boat scene, yeah, I like started crying. And so I wanted to try to do a version of Pollyanna that wasn't just the Catherine Warwick version, but so I tried to take the 3 different versions of Pollyanna and take pieces of each of them and put them together, which I'd never done anything quite like that before. So my attempts at doing, I think, what you guys do, it's tricky because the other versions in the games don't have the B part from the song, the vocal song, and so I needed to find a backing track version of that. I don't know, I'm rambling. I really like Pollyanna, that's what I'm getting. But no, it's interesting. I've been working on an arrangement of Onette for forever, but I don't have brass or a bass, and it just doesn't sound right with piano. You can put the melody on a flute just fine, but yeah.
Let's get some sick MIDI brass.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, I have a virtual piano that I use, and that can fill in a lot, but sometimes, like, you just need to have you just need a friend who plays brass. That's what you need.
You need the Super Soul Bros.
Clearly.
Do some crossovers.
Are you guys gonna play Fate Serious by any chance?
I don't know what it is, so I don't think so.
That's my favorite battle theme from Mother 3.
Oh, okay. I don't know the names of the tunes yet. I just beat it a week ago. First
I
round.
beat it a month ago.
And now here we are.
And now, yeah, I'm talking about it. Like I know what I'm talking about.
But I like things, I really, really like them.
No, you're good. You're great. You're all great.
That's what we're all
Jimmy, your work has been more influenced by rather than interpretive of. I was curious if you could talk about how Earthbound and the music of that series has impacted your music directly.
Yeah, it's been especially something I've been having a lot of fun with the Omori soundtrack that I'm currently writing. Like, Earthbound is full of so many like really interesting and weird sounding sound effects in particular. And like I really love sound design, just creating sounds from like synthesizers or like manipulating samples and stuff like that. And like in particular, when you're backing out of a menu, there's like a certain sound it makes that is in the Omori soundtrack so much just as like a snare drum. It's like basically sampling that. And there are many instances, like I have to write a track, it's like a cave full of dinosaurs or something. And of course, like Lost Underworld is like a super like funny, goofy, textured track. But there's a software synthesizer called Serum. That's a wavetable synthesizer. And what you can do with that, weirdly enough, is import JPEGs.
No.
And it creates a waveform
No way.
out of it. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so good.
And for this dinosaur cave, you can have two oscillators. One oscillator was the overworld Chompasaur sprite that like I automated to like just do like this weird bend noise, and then the other was like the battle sprite for it, and it just made the weirdest and I think fairly earthbound sounding noise that really gave that a lot of character.
I can't wait to hear that.
It's really fun.
That's like the audio equivalent of a tool David Bowie used for lyric writing. Have you ever heard of the Mac verbalizer?
No, what is that?
Bowie had been using the cut-up method, which is something that beat poets had used for a long time, starting with his work in the 70s during what's called his Berlin trilogy. And that's where he'd cut things out, he'd spread them all out, he'd arrange words together. They wouldn't necessarily use those specific arrangements of words, but he'd create ideas. And Brian Eno had these cards he made. You can still buy today in different iterations. You can buy a phone app for them called Oblique Strategies. And they're these random ideas that you sort of use to interpret, like, well, I'm going to create a project, I don't kind of know where I'm going to go with it, so you pull out an oblique strategy card and it tells you something. So years went by, and he thought, well, I'm still using this method, I want to create a more powerful version of that method. So he had a friend in the late 80s do up a piece of computer software where he could import websites, type in words, scan things, and it would spit out this mess of just gibberish words, and he would use that to construct songs. That's what he used for the rest of his career, more or less. And that's the audio version of it.
Yeah,
that's so crazy.
pretty much, yeah. Yikes. Yeah, aside from that, like, basically every cave song in the game has the exact same, like, just weird sweeping sine waves, because I love them a lot.
And then there's like those shaky little
Oh, yeah. There's just so many cool sound textures in the Mother series that really influence like the way I want to like score games without one for one taking it, I guess.
You know, Super Metroid really did a number of or Metroid in general, regular Metroid, pioneered the kind of ambient game soundtrack, but Earthbound took that, and Mother took that, and made it so much weirder, very, 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 very quickly, which is, it's great to have that balance, like where you enter a cave and it's like noise rather than music.
Yeah.
And they do that in so many different ways throughout the game. Please, always, anybody at any time.
That is one of the things that I really appreciate about the Mother series. Like, so I arrange a lot of music from a lot of different games, particularly RPGs. And like Final Fantasy VI was like my bread and butter when I was a kid. And so there's a lot of classical inspired music, prog inspired music, and some metal inspired music if you play Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Not a good game. Amazing soundtrack.
Wonderful.
The soundtrack is wonderful. But there's nothing like Earthbound. Like, nothing sounds like it. It pulls from such diverse inspirations. It has everything from really strong, beautiful melodies to really weird, funky, trippy stuff to really ambient stuff. And I can't think of anything. I mean, that's part of why I have an arrangement with my band, is like, what would you do and how would you do it? A lot of the really good tracks that stand out are just really, really different. And I don't know if that's because the composers had different inspirations. I found Mother 3 had more music than any game I think I've ever heard in my life, but it had a more standard soundtrack, which was fine for me because I love that stuff. But it didn't quite have the degree of weirdness that Mother did, or Mother 2 that Earthbound did. And I don't know why that is, because I don't study music that well.
Well, I think contextually it's just that that wasn't Shogo's style. And the other guys, the reason he took over was not any kind of bad blood. They simply weren't available at the time. And of course, the development of Mother 3 had lots of ups and downs over the years, so I don't really know how that tied into it. But you're right, it is more basic, I suppose, but it still does that. It's sampling in a way, like the Batman theme from the 60s show is like blatantly in there.
See, I wouldn't say that it's basic. I would say that the genres of music in it are things that I would be more accustomed to hearing in an RPG.
That's a better way of saying it.
Because it's still sophisticated and beautiful and interesting, and it does have versatility, which it kind of has to given the battle system. But I don't know, and it's not anything against it, because I actually would rather just sit and listen to the Mother 3 soundtrack just for fun than Earthbound, even though I love Earthbound soundtrack. But I wonder what it is specifically about the composers of Earthbound that, like, what their inspirations are. Like, if it is because they are as old-fashioned, or not old-fashioned, but like classic rock.
Well, yeah, they're all in bands, and they're good bands. They're really good bands, and I've barely even gone down that rabbit hole. But look up Keiichi Suzuki and Hip Tanaka's records, and you'll find some amazing stuff.
What was that band name?
There's a moon in it, I think. Moon Riders, yes, they're great. So someday I'm gonna go deep into that hole, but not yet.
A thing about like Mother 2 soundtrack too, like Suzuki, he hadn't, I mean, at least before Mother, like he never wrote video game soundtracks. Like he was coming from a completely different angle, and that's why it's like so unstandard in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's so great when, like, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like there's a really great band out of Brazil called Os Mutantes that in the time rock and roll music was illegal, so they were getting music on bootlegs, they were getting music pressed to like stuff that music shouldn't be pressed to for quality purposes.
Hit clips.
and they were interpreting those sounds and figuring out how to make them themselves. They made a snare out of like a bug spray can just to make that sound. Like that necessity is the mother of invention, and it's so well channeled through music. And as for their influences, actually, there's a great interview which was translated, but I don't believe is online anymore. I looked for it last night, and I could only find some notes from last year, where Shigesato Itoi talked to the composers in Mother 1 and 2 about their influences and score in general, and there's some great information there, including like basically a full list of their musical tastes. There's a couple things where they actually kind of made a playlist of music that influenced Mother. So here's a quick list. Of course, the Beatles right off the top, huge influence, and they sampled the heck out of Rick Ocasek of the Cars, his first record, which is great, by the way. It might be his second record. The one with Keep On Laughing on it. Anyway, if you like the music of Earthbound, that record should be examined thoroughly because there's chunks of the music of Earthbound in it. Godley and Cream, Prince, My Bloody Valentine, Nirvana, The Beach Boys, XTC and XTC's frontman Andy Partridge, Van Dyke Parks, and surprisingly, A Tribe Called Quest, who I learned last year. They said in an interview that they sampled something from A Tribe Called Quest. They kind of basically dared anybody to find it, and so far, I put the word out last year, no one's found it.
But in Earthbound?
In Earthbound.
Do you know the track?
I don't. No one does. Like it's still it's one of all the known secrets. I think it's one of the deepest, darkest audio secrets at least. Yeah, we gotta find it.
Does A Tribe Called Quest know about it?
I don't think so.
They know? You hit them up?
They'd probably be the only ones who could really pick out whatever nuanced millisecond of audio they sampled for this. But the one of the people they spoke about most highly was Prince and his influence. You don't see, you see the Beach Boys and you see the direct samples they took. You see how all that bleeds into the Mother scores. But Prince had a more kind of amorphous influence. That's a quote from them. Prince blended music genres together in a way Mother did too. His level of concentration and the instantaneous force he held when diving into music making was incredible. There's not an explicit feel of funk in the game, but once in a while it'll show its face through the bass phrases and rhythm. If you feel a little funk-hey, then when you're playing Mother, that's why. So, insofar as the way the music of Mother continues to influence all of you here as musicians, what do you think has been the strongest takeaway? We've sort of danced around this a little bit, but what's the lasting thing that you think probably has influenced your work perpetually since interfacing with this music?
There's such a sentimentality to the melodies within the entire series that moves people to such a huge degree, and I think it does have a lot to do with the simplicity that they've set out for most of the main themes anyway. And that is definitely a philosophy that I've tried to adopt, at the very least. I want to make people all shivery and feel good and cry together and jump, man.
Yeah,
it's great.
A good anchored theme will give you goosebumps under the right circumstance, but something that's tonal, might not. We don't see a lot of really powerful themes and film scores right now. It's all tonal stuff, and that's kind of a shame because
I agree.
you won't hear some notes and think, oh my god, like that's, you won't think that's Superman. Just hear some tonal pieces and like, oh, I guess things are moody. Okay.
I guess for me, so part of what we do in our band that makes it, I guess, a little different from many video game cover bands is the improvisatory nature of it. We have pretty much most of our tunes feature improvised solos from members of the band. And where Mother has affected me in Earthbound in that regard is the fact that the melodies are so simple but haunting, but still they're not that complicated, but they really stick with you. So it's kind of affected my approach to improvisation, where I kind of try to play more simple but sweet melodies in my playing, something that everyone can enjoy, not just people who are necessarily big on jazz and they can kind of like understand some of the more complex stuff. I'm trying to bridge the gap between the two and make it so that the stuff I play when I'm improvising is kind of accessible to everyone. Everyone can enjoy it and feel hopefully moved to some degree just by the fact that I'm not trying to go too crazy with the stuff I'm playing, I guess, most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the soundtrack to Earthbound and having to arrange so many tunes and kind of really dig deep into, all the different horn melodies happening at the same time, especially something like Good Friends, Bad Friends, which actually I had to transcribe that entire thing by ear, which is really difficult because you're listening to maybe 4 horns. There's like a buried part in there too. So it's like, having to transcribe all of that and just seeing how all the melodies play off each other, like, in counterpoint, was really fascinating to me. And I think that was kind of the turning point for us in our band. That's when we started to do a lot more written arrangements and tried to be a little bit more creative with just playing the tune as more of a lead sheet kind of thing, like just a memorized melody. And it helped us, it helped the band get in gear to do very much more progressive and complex arrangement because, like Good Friends, Bad Friends was pretty complex, even though it's like a straightforward read down. Being Friends was just pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even you did Pokey Means Business, right?
Yeah, that was. I wish I had. For Pokey Means Business, basically what happened about a week before Camp Fangamer is my laptop it completely died out of nowhere. I turned it off one day and I turned it back on. Couldn't do it. They couldn't fix it, and I lost a lot of the arrangements I had done for Camp Fangamer. Pokey Means Business was one where I wasn't at home. I didn't have my notation software anymore, so I had to do that one. Just so I had to go back to learn it on the piano, that crazy thing that and write that one out, the crazy time signature. So that one was just a really fun tune to do. But I wish I had been able to do the MIDI thing for that one.
Yeah, I think it was a crash. It was definitely a crash course for me in pop-up as far as like learning how to arrange tunes for this band and putting in that kind of work. Learning how to use Finale.
I guess for me, I haven't really, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily technically inspiring because I don't, most of my arrangements are for my band. Like I said, we've yet to do other music, although I think we will eventually. But it's mostly, it's such a very heartfelt game, and the soundtrack is very heartfelt, and you can tell that everybody involved was madly in love with what they were doing. And I think that really carries through in the melody. And for me, that's really inspiring because, I don't know about you guys, but imposter syndrome is a really big problem for me. I didn't know that I was going to be on this panel because I was like, surely not. I don't know enough about what I'm talking about. I don't do music enough. When I do Mother music, I don't worry about that because I know that I'm doing it with love and I know it's going to be received with love, and that kind of helps me overcome some of my fears and insecurities, because that's not what it's all about. It's about loving the music. And so that's what I take away from it, and I am extremely grateful for that.
Don't let Lauren's bashfulness fool you. She's one of the most ludicrously talented front persons in the nerd music scene. So just putting that out there. Now, you guys mentioned the progressive elements of some of the themes, and I thought it was interesting that Suzuki specifically referenced the Beach Boys record Smiley Smile. He said it's a really mysterious album that's packed with the brightness and darkness of America and is almost completely void of drums. The percussive techniques in this album had an enormous impact on the game. And I don't really even, I'm not even deep enough into understanding the technical aspects of music to know really what he's getting at there, and how that worked out. But is there anything odd about the drums, really, overall, that you perceived?
The drums in Earthbound, well, there aren't many drums. I'm trying to think of tunes that have some sort of MIDI beat or something, but a lot of it is just sparse percussion in the right place.
Well, I guess that's the connection.
Yeah,
Then.
yeah. It doesn't. It's not. There's no just recurring kind of drum beat that behind the thing that keeps everything together. Like a lot of tunes, like a lot of video game music would have. It was like 2 lead lines, bass, and drums. That was kind of the standard for most games back in the day, just because it was the easiest to do. And then Earthbound is completely different in that there are multiple parts happening at once, and then the drums, like you said, are almost completely, the tracks are devoid of them. It's just really well-placed percussion hits and stuff in the right place, and it's just like less is more.
Yeah, but just goes to show, how smart these guys were. They were really coming at it from a completely different angle, coming out from outside of the game music design field and made something truly remarkable that I feel is one of the most significant parts of the Earthbound experience. It's any of the scores are music that I would just put on and listen to. And in fact, thanks to some very successful Kickstarter efforts, that's happened now. Both Mother and Mother 2 have been released on vinyl in the last year, just since last Camp Fangamer, and that's remarkable. I can't imagine these guys would ever have imagined that they'd be pressed on 180 gram vinyl in this great packaging. It's ridiculous. Hopefully they'll follow up with a Mother 3 one sometime soon, which, considering the sales for the others, I think is probably inevitable. I don't know that there's too many pathways. We've covered a wide swath here. We could talk about game music in general and our feelings on effective use of game music, because obviously the music for the Mother series is highly effective. It's very staged. It's extremely cinematic where and when you hear certain sounds. What are some of your other favorite examples of, I guess, avant-garde scoring or just powerful use of scoring in video games?
I mean, it's a little playing with the crowd, but Undertale is obviously a game that
Very
takes
true.
many a page from the Mother series in very, very sweet ways.
But one thing that I think is very interesting about the Mother games is that by and large they don't have character themes. I mean, Paula's theme is there, which, by the way, you can fit Paula's theme into the twosome theme. I did that. It was very exciting to find that they fit nicely together. But there aren't really other named character themes that I can think of in at least the second and third game offhand. And that's really interesting because, again, I've played a lot of Uematsu games, and he's got character themes. He's very Wagnerian, John Williams, here's the happy version, here's the sad version, and they're related to the characters, and so sections related to that character will have part of that character's theme. And the Mother games don't have that, and I think that it's because the characters aren't the focus in the same way. I think it's more about the theme and the feel and the storytelling. And I feel like Undertale has a bit more of the character theme, but I'm not sure, because it definitely reuses themes. It's definitely doing that intentionally. But I don't know that you could say all of them are for characters particularly, so I don't know, it's a tricky position. But I think that's very interesting, and that's something that stands out for me that's unique about the Mother soundtrack.
Yeah.
At the same time, just on Undertale, there's some weird uses of themes in that too.
Yes.
For some reason, the song that plays in the ruins is in Undyne's battle theme. And I don't know why that is. Anyway, just a little aside.
Have you read the 3-part explanation of Undertale's music and themes?
It's an explainer.
Yes. Well, at least it's somebody who's not Toby Fox explaining that, but it makes very good sense. I'll see if I can find that link. I like Undertale.
Yeah, me too.
Is this a game I should play?
Oh, yes.
Loaded question.
I know it's super popular, but I don't think me and Brian have played it. I know nothing about it, but we actually have I did an arrangement of Megalovania for our band.
It was really good.
Oh, thanks. Except it's a lot slower than the original, but that's all I know about the game. So hearing you guys
That's
talk about
good.
the music is now I'm like, okay, now maybe I should see what it's all about.
It's good. The less you know, the better.
Yeah, I know literally nothing.
Yeah,
Except
it's-
there's a skeleton.
Yeah, there's a skeleton. It's basically made by a kid who grew up in the Earthbound community and like got his start in game design by making Earthbound ROM hacks. So there are a lot of connections.
I met him, Toby Fox, right? He was at Camp Fangamer last year?
He was, yeah.
Yeah, I met him and talked to him. I didn't know anything about Undertale. He didn't mention it at all, so I don't know how long it's been in development. But
But it wasn't out yet back then, actually.
yeah, it wasn't out, but I imagine he must have been working on it.
Maybe he must have been.
The demo. Like, he was showing people the demo.
Mm.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, so that when I heard his name attached to the game, I was like, wait, that's the guy from Camp Fangamer.
How about you, Brian? Any or either of you really any favorite scores?
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of like old classic kind of games from like Sega Genesis. Like we're all pretty big fans of the Sonic soundtrack, like the early Sonic stuff. And Earthbound's just, it's so different. Like it's an RPG and it's not orchestral. I think that's what kind of stands out about it as well, is that it's more, you can hear the modern music influences in that soundtrack, and I don't know, it was really interesting to kind of go through all of that music and put it into our repertoire and see how well it fit.
Yeah. As far as games go that have the music has a big impact on them, similar to Earthbound, I'm sure people here are familiar with Zelda Wind Waker. That's a game that used music in such a great way that affects the whole game, even if you're not paying attention. Like from little things to like how when you hit enemies, the more times you hit them, the music goes up in pitch, and the themes in the game are very varied, and they're used at the right time to kind of elicit certain emotions. So whenever I think of games that have a very intelligent use of music, where everything's very intentional and the game works together with the music, it's not like they did the game and then the music, they're like, okay, we need you to compose some tracks for the game. It really feels like the music is part of the gameplay. I would say Wind Waker. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that, but
Oh yeah.
Another game kind of like that, it's a completely different genre of game, but Rayman Origins, when it came out again, or when they re-released it, it's a re-release, right?
I have no idea.
Well,
That's the original game, actually.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
the original? Okay, cool. Well, that game had some really cool music elements, like just throughout the entire game. Like you would just jump on a little platform and there would be a musical note that would play. Then, if you jump through all these platforms, like in a sequence, it would play like a melody that would match the music going on in the background. It's like a really cool music into the game.
I gotta put one up for my dude Kazumi Totaka. He wrote probably one of my favorite soundtracks is the Wave Race 64 soundtrack. I'm all about that from toe to tip. But also he was like the lead sound director on Animal Crossing for all of them, but specifically the GameCube one. The soundtrack in that is so wildly varied, but still very centralized on the main theme. Basically, every hourly song in one way or another is a play on like the main Animal Crossing theme. but it is interpreted in so many, I mean, literally 24 different ways that are all like the sound palette they use is super lush. Like there's a lot of use of like 808s, like hip hop drums and stuff like that you wouldn't expect, and it's very beautiful and great and very influential in the end.
I'm going to jump in here. So I'm an RPG girl, and so on the subject of like the classical, traditional, symphonic RPG soundtrack, because that definitely is the standard. I don't know if anybody here has ever played the Suikoden series, but it doesn't have character themes so much, but it definitely has motifs and it uses them very intelligently. Like at one point, I've been kind of sort of arranging a Suikoden 2 medley for my band and trying to figure out what tracks to put in. I listened to the entire soundtrack a bunch because like an excuse to listen to Suikoden 2 is a good excuse. And I found that like, because we do the chase, the Battle of Lupa Blade, which is like the super, super scary villain. He's not the final villain, but he's the scariest. And I realized that all of these other tracks that have to do with the enemies, like pieces of those fit together into the chase. And I've noticed a number of other tracks are like that. And it's really interesting to see that, the degree of detail that an obsessive composer can put into something.
That's beautiful. That's what it's all about.
I love it. And then like on the complete other end of the spectrum, because you're talking about RPGs that kind of break the mold, I like Phantasy Star. And the Genesis has a very, very, very different set of sounds than the Super Nintendo. And so like, man, the bass that you can get on the Genesis is ridiculous. So Phantasy Star 4 has this like techno bass mashup thing, and it's actually like a technological RPG instead of a fantasy one. I mean, it has fantasy, but it's mostly like we've got like spaceships and robots and stuff like that, which I guess kind of makes it weird the way Earthbound is weird. But it's really interesting to hear how you can have like just as powerful and emotional a soundtrack with a completely different tone on a completely different system.
Yeah, Michael Jackson used that Sega bass to full effect in Sonic and Knuckles. So yeah. Now we're running out of time here, so I want to take the opportunity for all of you guys to talk about your respective projects, where people can find you, and so on and so forth. A little self-plug. We'll go in reverse order this time. Start with Brian and Alex. You can find them here later today.
Yeah. We're going to be playing here every day, probably twice a night. One for charity from 4 to 6, I think, and then another kind of more main set, and we're going to have kind of themed main sets throughout the weekend. Tonight we're doing a all-mother set for our main show, and we're also doing a charity.
Yeah, you can find us at Super Soul Bros on pretty much everything: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So if you're interested in what we're doing, and Twitch.tv, we have a partner stream, and we stream Fridays and Sundays, and we do. Basically, we're learning new tunes, but we play all our repertoire and take requests from the chat, and people donate to hear things, maybe different styles and whatever. And if you just want to hear some music, you can just tune into that. It's twice a week, so
yeah. From time to time, we'll do a really fun thing on our stream called Twitch Plays Super Soul Bros. So since all of us are kind of we can all improvise fairly well, and we're all really adept at hearing like maybe where our keyboard player is going and we can follow. We let the stream, just the Twitch stream, they just type in a bunch of tunes, and then we'll just medley through tunes for like 30 minutes straight.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Oh my god.
And then sometimes, we'll do some funny things, like we'll have our trombone player rap, and then have people just type in like food items so we can have things to rap about. So a lot of it is, sometimes we fall flat on our faces, but a lot of it is just the improv nature of what we do that makes it interesting, and there's a lot of funny moments that come out of it, and
we try to always try new things for our audience so that doesn't get stale. We'll do fun things, like some people donated to have me play the Epic Saxman theme for, I think it was 26 minutes straight, and they had me on a little picture-in-picture window on the bottom. And then they would kind of cut back to it every once in a while to show us still doing it. Stuff like that, or they wanted the horns to play their melodies and solos on kazoos. Just like, we try to make it really fun and exciting to watch, even if you've seen us before.
For the the charity event later, we're going to have a bunch of these pre-rolled shenanigans that we're going to pull off, and like, so we can have maybe the horn section pelvic thrusting the entire time through a tune, or we can have Alex put his mouthpiece on backwards so he can barely play it. So we have all these like really funny things planned for the charity event later, so check it out. It's going to be fun.
I'm online. I'm just online as Clover and Sea Life. It's an ampersand. On Twitter and SoundCloud, it's just Clover Sea Life, no and. And I have a record out called A Sentimental Cry on the label Galaxy Swim Team. It's pretty heavy on the wave race inspiration, but also there's a song about Tony from Earthbound on it. And then the game I'm working on right now is Omori, O-M-O-R-I. It's a RPG inspired by a lot of like RPG Maker horror games, but also a lot of Mother and Earthbound inspiration too. So, that me.
My band is The Returners. If you look up The Returners VGM for video game music, you'll find us. We don't have any big shows planned right now. Maybe they'll have us back at PAX South for a third year. That'd be pretty cool. We are working on a new album, but we haven't finished arranging the music for that. So if you happen to live in Austin, Texas, you can see us live. I don't know other than that. For me, if you look me up anywhere as Lauren the Flute, I think I'm the only Lauren the Flute on the internet. I'm active with the Materia Collective. We put out big compilation albums. We've got one that I'm really excited about that we can't announce yet, but we just turned in our tracks. I stream on Twitch a lot, and that's fun. And then I finally finished grad school, so I can pick back up Undertale Overture. I'm trying to make a rock opera prequel to that game. I like it a little tiny bit. You should play it. Let me tell you about Undertale. But yeah, no, just music and gaming and stuff. So I am always happy to talk to people. And some of you guys have apparently heard my music before, which is cool. So thank you.
And you can find all the podcasts that I run over at nerdyshow.com. We're on SoundCloud and iTunes, etc., etc. We have a lot of different shows. Whatever kind of nerd thing you're into, chances are we've got you covered with something new and magical for you to listen to. I also publish articles over there on occasion if they have a nerdy slant, and my music articles are up on consequenceofsound.net. If you want to check out more panels with me, well, Lauren and I have one at 3, which is about the quintet trilogy of games, that's Soul Blazer, Illusions of Gaia, and Terranigma, and their theme of the death and resurrection of the world, and how that's mirrored in Mother 3. And then at 5, I'm doing a panel called Deep Darkness, which is about the horror elements in Earthbound. Let's see what else. I'll see you throughout the weekend. Well, I'll see you throughout the weekend. Oh yeah, flyers. If you want to check out Nerdy Show, we got flyers on the table here. And also Nerdy.fm, our nerd music radio station. We have a massive selection of all the greats from the nerd world in every single genre. It's 24/7. There's an app on Android and iPhone, so you should check it out. There's plenty of Earthbound tunes on there. Thanks so much, guys.